We're all owned by the Syndicate, body and soul. Or should I just say body?
Hello, filthy movie lovers, something weirdos, and anti-criterion bros, to the 5th episode of the Sin Syndicate, the only podcast that can tell the Bennett twins apart and knows that a cat of 8 tails is not the same as a cat of 9. My name is Gentry Austin, writer and researcher, and I'm here with my co-host, adult film historian Casey Scott. And today we'll be returning to the well after a detour into Milligan land. Yes, we will be talking about another film with girl in the title. The 1965 roughie Rent-A-Girl, written, directed, and co-produced by Werner Rose.
You know, you've been involved in a pretty sordid affair, haven't you?
It was awful, Mr. Riley.
But more on that in a moment. Let's talk updates, corrections, and discoveries for the week. Casey, how loud did you scream at the announcement of these 2 lost Andy Milligan films being found and having their debut at Tribeca of all places?
Well, first of all, the timing was interesting because Tribeca announced their lineup, and I was looking at the docs because the company that I work with, our salesperson in charge of docs, was looking at docs, and she said, "Oh, have you ever heard of Andy Milligan?" I said, I literally just recorded a 3-hour podcast about him a matter of days ago. Why are you bringing him up?" And she said, "There's a documentary about him premiering at Tribeca." And so I was like, "Oh God, they finally finished," because this doc was supposed to have been included in the Milligan Dungeon of Andy Milligan box set, but they were still working on it. So now they finally finished it. They interviewed a lot more people that are actually not in the box set, so it's supposed to be really substantial. So that is premiering Wednesday, June 11th. And then it's showing 3 times in the Tribeca Film Festival. But then the really exciting news was that, yes, discovered through the Eye Institute in Amsterdam, which has been doing great work in restorations of all kinds, discovered one surviving print each of Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me and The Degenerates. And so that's premiering Friday the 13th as a double feature, one time only, and it's going to be hosted by Jimmy McDonough, so I'm excited to finally meet him. Tickets go on sale April 29th, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I already have my alarm set to make sure that I buy those tickets immediately.
And Alex will be in the doc.
Yes.
That's what I have heard. Yes. Alex DeSanta,
yes, he is.
we
yes,
talked
Alex,
to last week.
Yes.
He will be in the documentary.
Yeah, he mentioned that they actually, and he had to go down. He's mentioned that he had to go down to New York for them to shoot it. They didn't go up to see him in Canada. So I was like, wow, that's a trip. And unfortunately, right now, Alex, we need to get you down here to see these. Right now, we're trying to figure out a way to get him down here. We have 2 months to figure that out.
I understand, but we need your help.
In other news, the same day that they announced this, I went to the LGBTQ Center to look into making an appointment to see the Paul Eden papers because I wanted to look at his journals to see if he wrote anything about Milligan and the 2 films he made for Milligan. I have an appointment on Thursday, the 24th, so I will be going, and I will be documenting my discoveries, and hopefully there's some interesting stuff there.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, let us know what you find.
Mm-hmm. And whatever you can tell us will be of great value in our investigation.
So let's dive right into Rent-A-Girl. We are in...
Back to Sin Syndicate year.
Sin Syndicate year. So let's just read the Something Weird video synopsis quick to give our listeners an idea of what we're getting into. Eager for a career in modeling, naive and not very bright Karen Anderson signs with a creepy brother and sister team whose Rent-A-Girl agency actually procures women for rich and kinky clientele. Starting with posing for pictures in the nude, Karen soon graduates to being the guest of honor at a special party thrown by wealthy Harriet Grand. Quote, a disgusting lady who enjoys whipping little girls 18 to 22, end quote. Full of sick eccentrics, the party's highlight comes when two women beat the bejesus out of Harriet before Karen is blindfolded and branded on the leg with a red-hot poker. Yeah, so the movie opens with a tease of that red-hot poker scene. Kind of is told similarly as the first movie we covered, The Sin Syndicate. It's sort of like in retelling in flashback.
Right. And also, I don't know if you were going to mention, the DVD that this is on is an amazing triple feature, which is Rent a Girl, Aroused, Help Wanted Female.
Yes.
And all three are terrific. So, yeah, it's a must own.
This is not to be confused with Barry Mahan's short nudie cutie, also named Rent a Girl from '67.
Right.
So this version is, like we said, directed by William Rose and co-directed and produced by Anton Holden. Tell us a little bit about this production, because I think it's best to start there. This is a Corsair production.
So the production company was Charles Rosenthal, who's the executive producer, and he produced the movie Shangri-La in 1961 with Dick Randall, who later we'll talk about more, continued being associated with William L. Rose. But so I actually found a court case, United States of America versus Charles Rosenthal, 1972. He attempted tax evasion for his personal income taxes for the years 1963 to 1966. As the principal officer and sole owner of Corsair Film Productions Incorporated, he did not file any taxes on any of the money he made on Rent-A-Girl. So he financed this film for William L. Rose. Okay. And Anton Holden always told me, when I asked him about it years ago, I reached out to him again to see if he had any additional memories, and he hasn't gotten back with me yet. But when I asked him about this previously, he kind of considered Rent-A-Girl as like an apprenticeship, because he had not been involved with the film industry. William L. Rose kind of had by this time, in terms of writing, he had been. But Anton was the assistant director, and then he supervised the editing, and then the associate producer. So this was really his first step into sexploitation. And then he followed it up with the absolutely spectacular Aroused, which is such a huge step up in quality from this. Not to say that this isn't good, but Aroused is just a one-of-a-kind masterpiece that's his first feature film. It's an incredible debut. For someone who has never made a film. Yeah.
So Corsair Films, did they do anything after this? Or was this the last hurrah after that?
Not Legal that I Troubles. Found. This was it. And yeah, well, Legal Troubles, years later. Like, that's the crazy thing. It said that it was Corsair Films was active until 1966, and then it took 6 years for the tax man to come knocking on Rosenthal's door. He had a history I found another court case with him where he was embezzling money from a travel agency that he was working for. And that was in 1962. So not the best guy to get involved with for financing your film. Of course, my question then is, like, I feel like Rosenthal must have sold this to Cambist. And I don't know if Rose or Holden got any money for this. Well, it would have been Rose, because Holden was more of like a crew member.
Right. Yeah, so Cambist Films, they also distributed Holden's Aroused. What else did they do? Yeah, big stuff.
Well, Cambists, that was Lee Hessel, and he passed away a couple years ago. So Lee Hessel started Cambist Films in 1963. He got started through a connection with Ava Layton and Radley Metzger. He invested $12,500 of his money into the purchase of this French film called I Spit on Your Grave that Audubon Films put out. And the proceeds from that film, they cut him in for $70K of the proceeds of I Spit on Your Grave. So that's the money that he used to form Cambist Films in 63. And most of his films were imports, but not like European imports. He bought a film from Audubon to get started, which was Daniela by Night, which was a French film. But he is the guy who went to Argentina to get films like The Unsatisfied and Love Hunger and The Pink Pussy and Deadly Organ, Female 70 times 7, these Isabel Sarli films. Rent-A-Girl was his first like homegrown original that he distributed.
Okay.
And it must have done really well for him, even with the legal problems, because Aroused was the next one. And he did very well with that too.
Yeah, I saw that he went on to distribute. He did Romero's The Crazies and La Raza's Vampires. Yeah, so I mean, those are pretty big Euro cult. I mean, sorry, Vampires, was a big Euro cult film that did well in the U.S. I don't know how well The Crazies was pretty big as well. So,
well, he always said that he regretted investing in that because it did not make money.
Okay.
He also distributed, because if you at the Arrow DVD has a very brief audio interview with him that his son Brad recorded, where he said he that was his one regret. That was the one film that he distributed that didn't make him any money. It was The Crazies. He distributed Romero's There's Always Vanilla earlier as The Affair, and I guess that made him some money, enough that he wanted to get involved with The Crazies. I actually would recommend, his son Brad has a YouTube channel where there are multiple interviews with Lee Hessel, and there's really he's sitting there with his dad in I think his late 80s discussing, or maybe not even his late 80s. He wasn't that old when he died, but discussing how he got started and the films that some of the films he distributed. He talks about Ava Leighton being like the brains behind Audubon Films, which I would totally believe that, because she was. I definitely recommend those. And Canvas was an interesting company. A lot of imports. They also distributed hardcore, but in a mainstream way. They were all imports pretty much. They distributed like Bordello and Swedish Minx and a few other ones with some inserts.
Cheesecake photography is an old American institution. It's very respectable.
Yeah, so the director, like we said, William Rose, he's an interesting character in sexploitation because in a lot of ways he's similar to Chuck Smith, who we talked about a couple episodes ago, because they could do it all. They're one of those guys that, you kind of had to do it all in sexploitation with the budgets you were given. He was an he could edit, he could write, he could direct, and most importantly, he was a photographer. He did the Olga films, which I think the Olga films can be seen in this film. Would you agree?
Yes, but so here's the big reveal. I spent the greater part of my day.
Don't tell me he didn't photograph any.
He did not. William L. Rose was not a photographer. Werner Rose was the photographer. Werner Rose started in film way earlier than William L. Rose. William L. Rose was from a writer's background. So the only thing that connects the two of them is that they both got involved with the industry through Joel Holt, who was a narrator and a producer and sometimes director of the voice of sexploitation. That's the only thing that connects the two. Other than that, they had very different paths in the industry. Werner Rose kind of fell in with Joseph P. Mara and George Weiss, and also a director. No, not a director. A producer named Herbert Leonard, who did 50,000 BC and Professor Lust and Smut Peddler, and then also produced a Lufthansa travel film, which is narrated by Jack Curtis. And actually, that travel film is interesting because it has scenes from the caves in 50,000 BC at the beginning of it, because it was shot at the same time as 50,000 BC. But yeah, William L. Rose came from a writing background, and so he was involved with theater and writing. Well, while Werner Rose was involved with industrial films, commercials, like advertising, things like that, and they both stumbled into sexploitation by accident. But William was more focused on the writing and directing aspect, while Werner was much more focused on the technical, because that's what his background was. He was a photographer.
Okay, so to clarify, these are two different people.
They are not the same person.
They didn't work together, though, right?
They never worked together. Their paths were basically parallel, and they did not cross except for Joel Holt. Other than that, they are completely different people. And I tried like hell to find evidence that they're the same person. They are not the same person. William L. Rose was American. Werner Rose was German. So even that. And also you can see William L. Rose on screen in two films. Werner Rose, I don't think appeared on camera.
Thank you, Karen. We'll take it from here. I think we have all we need.
So yeah, two very different men who just have very similar names. And so I don't know at what point those two names combined, and I don't know where that information came from. But I think that's something that kind of, I mean, I guess it makes sense. You know, how many W. Roses were working sexploitation in New York at this time? But their films are very different. Just even photographically and visually. Like Rent-A-Girl is much more, it's not as professionally shot as the older films, because it wasn't, you know, it didn't have that technical finesse that Werner brought to those films. I can see some similarities to Professor Lust and Smut Peddler, but even those are very different.
So you're saying Werner Rose photographed the older films.
Yes.
What else?
And Murder in Mississippi, 50,000 BC, The Smut Peddler. Yeah, they're all, yeah. No, Werner was always Werner or Varner.
Okay.
And William Rose was either William Rose or William L. Rose.
So
and
what did William direct? Other than Rent-A-Girl, what did William...
The official William Rose directors lineup is Rent-A-Girl, Pamela You Are, Girl in Room 2A, and that's it.
Okay.
Those are the only films he did. But he wrote The Hookers, Watch the Birdie, All of Me, The Shameless. Yeah, he was a writer. He was writing with Richard Schul, who he co-wrote Pamela You Are with as far back as 1960. They wrote a script that they actually registered at the Copyright Office. And maybe that's where that confusion came from, because that script was never made into anything in America. It was turned into a German TV movie an Austrian TV movie, actually, in 1967. So maybe the German thing got that confused, but I think that's more of a Dick Randall connection. Probably. Okay,
so then I assume Werner did Chained Girls, because that's a Mara film.
Yes. Yeah, all the Mara stuff that's all Werner.
Werner Rose, not William Rose.
Right.
Okay, interesting.
Right.
And
then he did some industrial films that I've been, it is confusing. And so that's why yesterday I was ripping my hair out. I was like, there has to be some evidence that these two guys are the same guy. Like, where did this idea come from that they were the same person? And I look back at Charles Kilgore's interview with him in Echo magazine, and there's so much evidence in there that then made it so much easier to prove that they are not the same person. And also, there's enough evidence in that interview to prove that stuff that's still being said about him, Werner, is not true. So it's like, it's very, it was a real, it was a roller coaster yesterday. Because I'm like a pit bull when it comes to my research. I'm just like, I need to find the proof that these two are the same people. And I found none of it. I just found a lot of evidence that they are not the same person.
Yeah, I went back and forth on it too. When I was talking with Alex, we were looking at that Echo interview as well, just trying to figure out what was going on.
I was able to trace, so like Rose went over to Europe to do the films with Dick Randall, who he knew since like 1962, because they registered there was something else, a script that was registered that was written by co-written by Rose, William L. Rose, and it was based on something Dick Randall wrote, or based on a story by Dick Randall. So he knew Dick Randall since the early 60s too. And by the early 80s, he was back in America. Meanwhile, in the 70s, while William L. was in Europe, Werner was still in New Jersey making industrial commercials and doing advertising campaigns and things like that, because that was his bread and butter, in working in the industrial film industry.
Yeah.
So even their paths, one path crosses the Atlantic, the others just stays right here on the East Coast. So it's just, it was like, okay, I think I have these two paths clear now. But I'm not going to even bother changing the IMDb, because
the credits
someone's just going to change it right back.
Yeah, the credits online are so fucked.
Everything you see and hear during this ceremony will remain an absolute secret with you. Do you understand?
Right.
All the other stuff
I found no evidence that he works on Fitzcarraldo either. But because I found a script. He registered a copyright for a script that he wrote for a producer in 1981, and that producer was based in California. So
okay, so that
I don't
places
believe that he
him
was over
geographically. Yeah. So to give you context, I
back
was
in the
telling
States. Yeah.
Casey about in Troy Howitt's book, his giallo book, when talking about The Girl from 2A, which William Rose did direct. He also Troy also noted that he believed that Werner Rose, who he believed was William Rose, appeared in Fitzcarraldo as a notary, just a bit part, but he also said that he worked as a dialogue director on that film. So that is not the case with William Rose. That appears to...
Yeah, I can't confirm that.
I don't know who it was. It could have been just some other.
There was
Werner
a guy named Bill Rose. Well, he's credited on the movie in both roles as Bill Rose.
Yeah.
That was the one thing I didn't do yesterday in all the stuff I was watching and all the commentaries I was listening to. I needed to watch Fitzcarraldo and see if the Bill Rose looks like the William L. Rose who was in Watch the Birdie and Pamela, You Are. He has a beard or a goatee, and he's very recognizable. He actually kind of looks like Dick Randall.
Okay,
like a slimmer Dick Randall.
Where is he in Pamela?
I need to double check that.
Do you remember where
in Pamela,
he is?
There's a brief sequence where the guy, like the young asshole that everyone is in love with for some reason, she goes to his apartment and he starts spanking her, and she has flashbacks to being like mounted by a guy who, I think on the IMDb they say he's the devil. I think that's might be a stretch, but that's him because it matches what he looks like in Watch the Birdie. Because in Watch the Birdie, there's a sequence with like a party, kind of like the Rent-A-Girl party, and he's very vividly there with a beard, but also with like a fake beard on top of his existing beard.
Yeah, because I just watched that, so I'll have to go back and take a look and see if I can find him.
That was Distropix, so I don't know if we're going to be seeing that reissued. Yeah,
it's very, it's more psychosexual, I'd say. It's a little headier. Mm-hmm. It's got a lot of like LSD, druggy flashbacks at the end, and it's definitely seems like he's aiming a little higher than the traditional run-of-the-mill sexploitation film.
Right. And it stars a Hollywood actress, like Elaine Edwards.
Legit.
It's kind of like The Minx
actor.
has Jan, what's her face, is in The Minx, which is similar, which also Canvas put that out and added stuff. So that's another weird parallel to like the Canvas thing, where sexy movies had like a Hollywood star in it to kind of give it legitimacy, even though she does nudity, which is shocking. And Pamela, You Are. I'm like, oh my God, how did they talk her into doing this? But
it was almost too good to be true that I had never enjoyed life so much before. But a doubt crept into my mind. Perhaps things were too good to be true. And, as Ken and I really grew serious about each other, I began to worry that Ken might not approve of the kind of modeling I was doing.
So, William Rose mystery probably solved. There might be more to come out of that.
Yeah, I would encourage, if anyone has any actual evidence to confirm that William L. and Werner are the same, I would love to see it. Accuracy is important to me. That's why I was kind of like, if I'm going to talk about this, I don't want to say he did the Olga movies because I'm not finding any evidence that's the same person.
Yeah. So that complicates or it simplifies his filmography a bit. So it sounds like then Rent-A-Girl is his first credit as director, producer, but he had done some writing before this, it sounds like. Yeah.
And he did some more writing after this. Like he wrote, he's accredited as only writing the Callie Sue sequence in The Hookers. I don't know if he wrote the other two sequences, but the one that he wrote that he's credited for on The Hookers is the Callie Sue, which is the best part of that movie.
Yeah, that makes sense because it is the most complex of the vignettes that are in that movie, and you can see
and the shortest, which sucks.
You can see sort of the trajectory a bit with once we get to Pamela, it is definitely, I'd say, the most highbrow of his films, and then he goes to Italy and makes this stupid giallo with Dick Randall, which I assume maybe had some meddling involved. I'm assuming if he had full control, it would have been different, but I'm assuming there are a lot of cooks in that kitchen.
That is the frustrating thing. You have that gap between Pamela and Girl in Room 2A, and it's like, why It's huge. And so it's just kind of like, what were you doing in between that time? It's possible that he was involved, went back to stage work. And I think that's where I met Dick Randall, because Dick, before he got involved with film, was like a stage manager in theater in New York. And I'm sure that's how they crossed paths. I'm sure that's how Rose met Anton Holden as well, because Anton went to like the High School of Performing Arts in New York and was involved in theater as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's just more evidence. It's like Werner Rose had no background in theater. His stuff was always involved with technical stuff, filming things with the camera and stuff like that. And William's background was really in writing, producing, directing eventually. But it was really more the written word, not the technical.
I'm not a model or anything like that. Oh, I thought perhaps you were. You're a very attractive girl, you know. Well, no, I've thought about it, but what girl hasn't?
All right, so Rent-A-Girl. Who do you want to talk about first?
Well, Barbara Wood is the star. She's the protagonist. So she plays Karen, this kind of goody two-shoes who needs a thrill in her life. She only made 2 other films that I've found. She's, for some reason, again, the IMDb, our best friend and our worst enemy in this area, because they say she's uncredited in the Hookers. I watched the Hookers. She's not in the Hookers.
I didn't see her there.
And then she appeared in Watch the Birdie, which was made in '65 as well, in a very similar role. And she's credited as Wendy Wood in Watch the Birdie. There is another Wendy Wood that's in Torture Me, Kiss Me, not the same Wendy Wood. So for when I found, she only made 3 films. Judy Is No Angel is missing. Though, according to Alex, our buddy, the Library of Congress has a print, and she plays like a predatory lesbian in that, which is very different from her 2 other roles. So I'm really anxious to see it.
Yeah, I think she's good. But I think
Barbara, I find she's very good. I think, especially because I think for a lot of these kind of roles, you kind of had like a Sharon Kent, who's fine but limited. I think she's good. I think she can play the innocent and the terrified, but also like she can act that she's like titillated by this topless cheesecake stuff that she's doing.
Yeah, I think her best scene is in the bed with her boyfriend when she's like coming clean and saying, you know, I've been doing this cheesecake photography, and you can kind of see her face like when she goes into this discussion. She's like, okay, I'm going to tell my boyfriend about this, and he's going to be, you know, supportive, and it's going to be, you know, a breakthrough in our relationship. But the response she gets back from him is not what she was expecting, and really the acting on her face I thought was really good.
You've been doing this?
Yes. What's wrong, Mike?
I don't understand you, Karen. This is real cheap stuff.
I thought you said the cheesecake was conventional.
But you're almost naked in these.
I'm not naked.
You come pretty darn close to it. What's the matter with you getting involved in something like this? Who looks at these things? Guys sitting alone in their bedrooms?
You said it was all right.
Yes, but not for you.
It's a decent job, and they've treated me very nicely.
It's not a decent job, and the people connected with this kind of operation are the lowest crumbs around. Karen, I don't want my girl involved with cheap girly photos.
Yeah. No, that is my favorite. That's my favorite scene of hers in the movie, definitely. Because I love how it's just like, well, look at what I've been doing. And then he becomes Mr. Uptight, family values, conservative Christian, and or whatever. And she and so it just completely, the mood shifts and she kicks him out. I love it. It's a very good scene.
Yeah.
I think if it had just stayed like dancing in the living room and nude billiards, I think it probably would have been fine.
So her boyfriend is, let's talk about this guy, because there's been some mixed credits around him as well. What do we know about?
Yeah, the IMDb
tell me,
is
what is his
on
name?
That too.
I don't even know.
So they say he's credited as Paul Dare. He is credited as David Ransom. His name is John or Jack Damon. That's not his real name either. But he was the longtime companion, as the newspapers would say, of David Durston, the director of I Drink Your Blood and Blue Sextet. The reason why I was able to determine his pseudonym is David Ransom, because that's the pseudonym of the producer on Boy Napped, which is the gay porn movie that David Durston made. So it's too coincidental that there's a David Ransom credited on Rent-A-Girl with Jack Damon, and then his partner makes Boy Napped literally 10 years later and uses David Ransom on it.
So is he in I Drink Your Blood?
Is John Jack Damon. Yes, he plays the sheriff in I Drink Your Blood.
Yes. Okay. So I have seen that credit floating around.
He's like the that's him. And then he's John Damon in those. But then I guess later in life he started going by Jack, sort of like John Kennedy, Jack Kennedy. And then he's in Blue Sextet. He's the star of that, and he produced that. And he kind of plays this artist who. I think he kills himself at the beginning, and then the plot is trying to figure out if he actually killed himself, and it's a lot of flashbacks, but very good looking guy. And then he made two other movies for Larry Crane, which I've not seen either of those yet, so to confirm that that's him. But at this point, I think Beware the Black Widow I trust more, because that just came out, and I think there's a lot of more people on the scene now that are making sure these things are accurate.
He's got like a matinee idol kind of face for sure. Definitely a handsome guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One of the more confusing characters in this movie, because kind of pushing away Barbara Wood's character for reasons that aren't really clear to me. She's like coming on to him, and he's like, no, slow down. I don't want to sleep with you, which kind of pushes her into this relationship with the upstairs neighbors.
Right.
How do you
so what you're saying
situation?
Is all of this is his fault.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
I say that
if he would have slept with her.
If he would have slept with her, and then he comes in and saved the day at the end. Yeah. I mean, I just think it's funny that he's also played by a gay man, a closeted gay actor who kind of stayed closeted until his death, basically, because he and Durston never really openly discussed if they were partners. It was kind of inferred over time. I think it's strange. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if because they describe him as being this very wealthy third generation heir of this wealthy family. So I don't know if it's, well, I don't want to have sex with you because what if you get pregnant and then my family wouldn't approve? It's never discussed, but that's what I'm guessing it is.
Sorry, Karen. I didn't mean to sound so cold. It's just that I've got a lot of things to think about. I've got to be more certain about myself, not you. After all, I can't keep on squandering my father's money forever. I've got a lot of important personal decisions to make.
It's okay, Ken. It's all right.
Sure it is, baby. We'll just play it smooth, huh? After all, we aren't squares, you and I, so we'll just take it cool, right?
Right.
Listen, I'll call you in a day or two, and we'll do something.
But then they do have sex later, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, it's not when they're.
They're in bed, but
I don't know.
They're both clothed, sort of. Yeah, I don't know. There is actually there's no sex in this film. Again, another sex film with no sex in it.
But yeah, there is a lot of sadomasochism, but no sex.
Right. It's a lot of like whipping, spanking, water hosing. Yeah.
Playing Evelyn, how do you say her name? Inge Christopher?
I think it's Inga Christopher, and I only wrote her down in our show notes because I had to remember the name because I don't recognize her from anything else. I think she's very good. She kind of reminds me of Christine Sibel, who's in later films. Like that's Christine Sibel didn't come around until 68, so she's kind of like an earlier version, maybe a little older of Christine Sibel. From Love Captive and Fly Now Pay Later. She's very good, surprisingly. And also Franklin Spencer, who is not Frank Spencer.
Yes.
So
plays
this is another situation where someone has combined the two. Yeah, so he plays Adam. So it's Adam and Evelyn, which is great. Nice one,
Adam
William L. Yeah, Adam and Eve. They're brother and sister, but they're both like united by their love of perversion.
But surprisingly, no incest between them.
No, I think that might have been a bridge too far at that time.
Yeah.
Maybe in like 67, hinted. 68. Yeah, not even hinted. They don't even share a lover, honestly. Nope. Yeah,
they kind of do their own thing.
Yeah, they have different. They do. Yeah, they just like making money using these girls that they rent out to people, which we don't see nearly enough of that for my taste.
Yeah.
But
Evelyn,
Franklin Spencer is not Frank Spencer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because Frank Spencer was in a lot of like Sarno films. I think he was a professional actor. He was in a lot of other stuff in New York. Franklin Spencer is not Frank Spencer. And so I think confusing that is on one of the posters for Rent-A-Girl. It says Frank Spencer. And yeah, it's not the same guy from like My Body Hungers and Red Roses of Passion and a lot of other films. Very different guy. I mean, they're both lanky white brunettes, and in black and white that kind of reads as the same, but this guy has a very distinctively evil looking face, whereas Frank Spencer is much more handsome, a little more matinee idolish.
Another incorrect credit online that you'll see,
which I'm not correct.
And yeah, I had that same issue where I was like, I don't know if these are the same people, but I looked at them, you know, like you said, in black and white, they do kind of read the same. Yeah, like you said, this is not the one that is in a whole bunch of Sarno films. He's got an interesting face. How would you describe it? He's kind of perfect for this role of kind of like the sleazy
Franklin. It's a very satire-esque face, or he looks like it's kind of demonic, right? I mean, when he smiles, it's like the cheekbones or something about it. He really looks like the perfect villain for this kind of role. So the casting is really good.
Yeah. And he carries around his little black book with all his his little black book that he opens up when he needs to rent out a girl has pages for flagellation. What's the other ones? Oh, transvestism, and I'm trying to remember what the third one is. Yeah, we don't. They flip past it. They flip past that page really quick.
They flip past it quick, right? And I don't remember the other ones. I should have written them down. But yeah, it's like there's basically 1 to 2 people per page, which just shows that they don't have as extensive a clientele base as one would think.
Oh, Bondage. That was the third one.
They still need to expand the business. Oh, Bondage. Oh, well, that's probably the Darlene Bennett.
Anything you want. Our girls are very well trained. All desires satisfied.
Let's jump into Darlene Bennett because she has a highlight in this film, which has been it's a clip that a lot of Something Weird fans might have seen images from, but I don't know how many have seen the full scene where Darlene Bennett is one of these rent-a-girls hired out for bondage, and she's brought to a warehouse and tied up in the familiar hands above the arms pose, and she's like into it. She's like, okay, this is regular stuff. I'm used to this. And then the guy pulls out a water hose and her face changes completely.
Yeah. It's pretty light. I think she's kind of... I think the impression that I get for most of the Rent-A-Girls is that they're into this. Like, it's kind of like the Sin Syndicate, honestly, where, you know what it's like? It's like, who's the one character in Sin Syndicate? I think June Roberts is the one who's kind of like, it's fun. I do it because I enjoy it. I feel like they're all kind of into it. So it's all just between consenting adults, which is why this little twist that like they're going to force Karen to be branded is like, y'all just ruined a good thing because everyone was just doing whatever they wanted to do in New York behind closed doors, consenting adults. Like you had to ruin it.
And it's not clear if the other girls are branded or if it's just a special thing for Karen.
Right.
So it's like,
maybe. Well, she is the most innocent, and she's the only blonde, unless you count Gigi Darlene, but she's barely present.
Yeah, Gigi's barely. But maybe she just didn't. Darlene was like into it, but then she was like, the cold water of the hose is just a bridge too far.
Probably. I did want to note that the guy in that sequence,
I have seen him before.
Credited as Harry. He's Harry Rose. He's credited as
oh my god, not another Rose to confuse us.
Yeah, he's Harry Rose. So I'm like, I think he's possibly related to William L. I think that's a little too coincidental. But he's in The Hookers. He's credited as Harold Heege, and he's the producer that Sharon Kent is forced to sleep with by her agent. So I was watching The Hookers, doing my William L. dive, and I was like, oh, the guy from Rent-A-Girl. Okay.
He's that twitchy guy.
Turn up other stuff as I watch it. Yeah. He's a guy who's like, don't take your shoes off before you sit down on the couch, and that
the neat freak.
Yeah, I mean, he has more to do in the hookers for sure. But I was like, wait, why does this sleazy old man look familiar? I was like, oh, I just saw him hose down Darlene Bennett.
Would you take your shoes off? No! Neatly, dear. I like things so neat. Yes. Now, would you raise your skirt just a little, please?
I don't know if he's related to William L. I think that would be a little odd if you hired, like, well, I don't know if it's an uncle, just like, hey, uncle, I'm making this sex movie. Do you want to hose down a model?
I mean, it could be a brother, right?
Possibly, yes. He much older brother. yeah. So I was just kind of brother. Like, I like some answers, which I'm probably never going to get.
Yeah, so mentioning Darlene, the other familiar faces, of course, June Roberts and Gigi Darlene, they all appear. Mm-hmm. June and Gigi appears near the end, near the big party sequence. Mm-hmm. June and who's the other girl playing pool with? Darlene is also in that scene. So Darlene and June play strip billiards. It's a fun scene.
Mm-hmm. There's a third girl in that sequence who I think she's mixed race, or maybe she's a black actress. She's in Pamela You Are as well at the party sequence. So William L. Rose called her up, 3 years later to feature her again in another movie. Very strange. Or I don't know, could be his wife. We don't know.
Yeah, and Gigi is kind of on the outskirts, just kind of rolling around and doing a little wrestling at the party. They are our patron saints.
You really ought to think about modeling. As they say, you're built for it.
Who else do we have in this film worth pointing out?
Well, Sam Menning is a really fascinating character, and he passed away, unfortunately, very old. He lived to be very old, and I never got to speak with him. He was an actual photographer in the 50s and 60s in New York, and he was the last person to photograph Betty Page before she retired. And he does not play a photographer in this. He plays a photographer in Watch the Birdie, and he's given some substantial screen time in that, and actually gets a really good death scene in that. In this, he plays the painter who paints two naked girls in a kind of a Barry Mahon-esque sequence, because this isn't a fetish.
It's the most boring scene in the movie. Yeah, it goes on way too long.
Right. And I'm just like, Sam Menning, that's great. It's good to see him. And then he got into acting after he stopped being a photographer. We worked a lot on adult movies in the 80s and 90s when he moved out to LA. And then I think his obituary made note. I think most people would know him from, he played some old guy in My Name is Earl, which I haven't watched that show in a long time. I used to love it, but very storied character. And I wish there was more known about him. There's a very brief interview with him on YouTube where he talks about the Betty Page thing. He used to manage strippers in New York, so I wonder if he was also involved with getting some of the cast for this film and other films who were strippers at the time.
Yeah, so that body painting scene, it's like you said, it's definitely a Barry Mahon-esque scene that goes on a little bit too long. But I do like how the twist at the end is that the girl that's being painted and that was hired is just left standing there while the, I'm assuming, husband and wife that hired her are so turned on they go over to the couch and just kind of do their own thing.
Yes, I can supply with the girl's paint. She'll be very lovely. Yeah, this afternoon's fine. 6th floor. Okay? You're welcome.
Yeah, that is kind of where the movie goes cold for me, that one sequence. I mean, I like seeing Sam just because I'm like, oh, it's Sam. Okay, great. But it's also... And the girls aren't really like, I'll be diplomatic and say they're just not up to the caliber of the other girls in the film. So I'm just like, this is not great. This isn't delivering anyway for me. The other girl that I wish I knew more about is, what is her name on that? Teresa Morgano, who plays Ginger. And she's kind of the catalyst for the big twist at the end. She's one of the renter girls who is the lesbian lover of Evelyn. So she's rented out to be this submissive maid for this rich bitch character named Harriet Grant, and that's played by Elizabeth Walker, and she hasn't done anything else that I can find either. But she comes back and she gets consoled by Evelyn, and she says, I'd really like to hit her back. And that's eventually the big twist. It's like, well, you ruined your whole business because you listened to your lesbian lover, and they decide to try to blackmail.
Yeah. Well, they fall in love.
Beat the shit out of her. They do. It's a love. Rent-A-Girl is a love story, really, but it's it's a romance. It's a New York romance.
Story between a procurer and
an employer and an employee.
Yeah.
It's a love story, It's just not a heterosexual love story. It's a progressive lesbian love story.
You shall give us an extra $100, and in return, we'll give you a very good working over.
Yeah,
but it's interesting. For some reason, I think I've seen reviews of this that said that they beat Mrs. Grant to death, but I think it's more clear that she killed herself in the bathtub.
Okay.
Her wrists have dollops of blood on them, so I think she killed herself in the bathtub. They didn't kill her.
Okay. I'll have to look at that again, because my reading of it this time was that so she gets paddled and whipped, and then you last see her kind of like slumped over the sink in pain. I assume that she like fell and hit her head in the bathtub and died.
I didn't see a head wound.
Right.
I definitely saw the wrist wounds, though. It was like this chocolate syrup mess on the wrists.
Okay.
And I don't know why was Karen still hanging around to go wander in the bathroom? I was like, girl, you need to leave this apartment.
Well, she went in there to make a phone call. Yeah, I think she ran in there to use the phone and call.
Which is crazy because she had just used the phone.
Or was it after she had just used the phone? Yeah, anyways. Yeah, so she...
Yeah, see, because that's the thing. I think the summary might be wrong. It might have those flipped because she's branded, then she runs to get on the phone. Yeah. Then they go to the Mrs. Grant scenario. Then Karen stumbles upon her. I'm like, Karen, this was enough time. You could have gone. You could have left. You need to get out of there. Unless you can walk maybe from the branding. I don't know.
That makes sense. Yeah. So I had also heard, I don't know how true this is, from the Something Weird liner notes, that this was banned in Chicago in '67 along with Body of a Female.
Boy, do I have some fun stuff to read to you.
Okay.
Gather around for a story time. Okay.
Lay it on us.
So, the way that Chicago worked was that you had to submit, if you wanted your film to be released in Chicago, it had to be approved by the Motion Picture Board and the Chicago Police Department in Chicago. So the film was submitted to Chicago Police Department for review on December 3rd, 1965. It was rejected December 6th, 1965. They appealed it January 5th, 1966. I'm going to read this to you. This is what the, who was it? It was Tidal Film Corporation, which was the regional distributor. So it wasn't a case involving Canvas. It was involving the Chicago film distributor who was getting it from Canvas. Canvas wasn't involved with this case. Lee Hessel wasn't involved. And also, I didn't copy this up for Body of a Female, but it was the same situation where they submitted it to the police department. They rejected it, which is crazy because it was a year after it came out. It took that long to get to Chicago. Let's see. It says, Rent-A-Girl is described by the defendants as a documentary. First problem. It then goes over this description of the film. It says the opening scene of this film shows a rather distraught but attractive young woman sitting in what is apparently the office of a district attorney. We learn that she has recently undergone a frightening experience in associating with a brother and sister team that specializes in providing young women to satisfy the perverted needs of sexual deviants, and it has decided to cooperate with the authorities in order to quote-unquote stop this sort of thing. In scene after scene, Episodes involving lesbianism, flagellation, sadism, voyeurism, and group orgies, as well as the more conventional, if less imaginative, heterosexual activities. The defendants readily admit that the film in question deals with sex, and they accuse the board and the trial court of confusing sex with obscenity. We believe the defendants are the ones who are confused. We certainly do not challenge the truth of the defendant's citation that sex, a great and mysterious motive force in human life, has indisputably been a subject of absorbing interest to mankind through the ages. We are not impressed with this argument. They're trying to argue that there was redeeming social importance in this film. Contrary to the defendant's assertion, our examination shows that Rent-A-Girl deals not merely with sex, but with sexual deviations, which can only appeal to those with a shameful and morbid interest in nudity and sex. The suggestive title alone indicates the nature of the film, and indeed the producers have apparently spared no effort to see that the spectator searching for the erotic is not disappointed. In conclusion, we find that the film Rent-A-Girl is obscene under the guidelines approved by the United States Supreme Court. We affirm the orders of the trial court enjoining the showing of this film in the city of Chicago. This is 1967, 2 years after it came out. Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Chicago. That's Chicago for you. The police department and the motion picture board said, no, you can't show this. So it was always involving Tidal Film Corporation. They'd never had any distribution in Chicago. But the film did premiere on October 15th, 1965 in Omaha, Nebraska. Of all places, Cambist decided to debut this film in Omaha, Nebraska, not New York. There was noted in there was an issue of Box Office Magazine where Cambist proudly announced it was going to premiere at the Muse Theater in Omaha, Nebraska. Well, I think in Chicago, Chicago was a problem. Cincinnati was a problem. I know Russ Meyer had major problems with Cincinnati and Cleveland, I believe. So yeah, Omaha is interesting. There were other dates that were noted that Cambist was like, we're proud to bring this to other places. I think other Midwest states, New York, Baltimore, I believe, a few other places. It showed in Kansas City as Hire a Model in 1966. And apparently they also had kits. Cambist prepared kits for other more conservative regions that just called the film Rented. Which is kind of like banned, censored, rented. So they could use that. As long as it didn't say like Rent-A-Girl, which is obviously prostitution, you could say rented. Yeah. And I guess it wasn't as much of an implication.
Well, that's a good point is the content in this, looking at it today might seem a little tame, but it still was pushing buttons quite a bit in 65. My hardest stuff here is probably the whipping scene with the cat o' nine tails. I'm trying to think what else is like really that transgressive. I guess overall maybe just the themes.
The lesbianism is never punished.
Yeah.
So that's something.
Yeah, I guess, and the secret society.
But I definitely think it's the sadism. I think
and just the way it's presented. Yeah, like I guess you could say the way it's presented is, the party at the end is shown as like generally a good time. Everybody's having a good time, except for Harriet, who gets brought up into the room and whipped. But otherwise, it's not
right. Yeah, it's interesting. When I was watching it, I also just revisited Cool It Baby, which was the Lou Campa movie that Box Office International distributed. And it's so interesting. It's very similar. It's another couple that are kind of like doing these blackmail situations. And it has scenes in a district attorney's office. I mean, it is a recurring theme in these films where the law is shown as like, they will help you. They're trying to stamp out obscenity and perversion and everything like that, especially in the big bad city of New York. And it's interesting because eventually you would see a turn against this in sexploitation and adult films when the industry got kind of tired of trying to play nice with the cops, trying to, continually bust them and take them to court and stuff like that. So they eventually turned against them and started portraying them as equally as deviant. So as the people that they accused of being perverts for watching and making this stuff. So it's interesting to compare this in 65 to something like, Climax of Blue Power in 1974.
Well, even in Anton Holden's Cargo of Love, it's a very similar situation as this, where the girl is kidnapped and sold into, it's more white slavery in that film. But the cops, again, are like the good guys in that film. They come in at the end, guns blazing, and rescue her. So, yeah, these themes were still pretty prevalent around 67, 68.
But But also something to consider, even in New York. I mean, I'm trying to think of what film it was. It might be Thigh Spy. One of these films thanked Mayor John Lindsay and the New York Film Commission so they were working with the film commission to make these sex films on the streets of New York. They weren't all in the underground, made in apartments and stuff. If they were shooting on locations, they weren't all guerrilla shoots. So it's interesting to think about which filmmakers or which production companies or producers were working with the law and trying to do everything above board. And I think if you're going to do that, then you obviously want to play nice with law and order.
That scene where he's like outside brandishing a gun. So I wonder if that's the scene that they were like, okay, we need to get police involved. We're going to shoot this scene with a guy like on the middle of the street.
There's a lot of outdoor footage in that. Yeah. It's shot in like, I think it was shot at the South Bay boat basin, or the boat basin that used to be there but it's not there anymore. There's a lot of really good locations in that. I think that was the one that thanked Mayor Lindsay, because the film commission was relatively new. I think it started in it was either 65 or 66, so it was brand new. That's when people really got more active in shooting in New York legally and trying to get actual permission to shoot in like good locations.
I hardly remember what happened after that. But that's when I called the police.
So I'm looking back at William Rose, Werner Rose conversation, and it has me thinking back to Professor Lust film. Like I could see some prints of William Rose, some fingerprints on there, but now that you're blasting the doors off that, I'm going to have to go back and rewatch that again.
Because it was because that was also one that was photographed by Werner, and William didn't photograph anything. He was not a photographer. And the key to Professor Lust that goes back to Werner is 50,000 BC and Smut Peddler and Professor Lust are all Herbert Leonard. And that was a producer who made commercial industrial films when he wasn't doing the sex films with Werner. So Werner did industrial films with Leonard first, and then Leonard said, I want to do sex films on the side to make more money, and didn't hide his name on any of these. He used his real name on everything. Okay. So I mean, that's the thing. I went back and forth. I was like, is it possible he did Professor Lust? Because it does have that look to it. And I was like, no. Because even Rent-A-Girl doesn't look like Smut Peddler or Professor Lust. They don't look alike. They don't have the same visual look to them. Pamela You Are definitely doesn't look like anything Werner did. And the editing in that is especially
crazy.
Much more different than Werner's photography. Yeah, it's basically, I mean, it's made in the editing room. And it's the same, I think there were 3 photographers on Pamela. And one of them, I think, was the editor. I think it was Sherman Price, I believe. So yeah, that's the same. The visual style for that film is really developed in post by the production team. So yeah, William, definitely more of a writer. Werner, technician. Yeah, I think that's the big difference.
Even if he didn't photograph the Olga films, I think he probably still was influenced by them and the style.
It's possible. I mean, at that point, well, also I'm wondering, that's something that I would like to know in terms of the Charles Rosenthal of it all. Did Charles Rosenthal, because he produced Shangri-La with Dick Randall. And that was 61. Dick Randall connected with William as early as 62. So if Dick Randall connected Rosenthal to William L., because Charles Rosenthal had the experience in sex films, and so he probably was more aware what the market was supposed to be. So there's like, I know you're a writer because Dick tells me you're a writer, so write and direct this movie. I don't know if the creative drive was Williams for that. He'd written some other scripts before that, but I'm not sure how he got into the director's chair. That's kind of one of these really tantalizing blank spots in the biography that I'm trying to piece together, because it's like, I don't know why he decided to step into the director's chair unless he had experience directing theater, which is possible, and working with actors, which I think he does really well in this. And then, Anton really just blew it out of the water with Aroused immediately after, which is just it's really crazy when you think about it. that he was just like, yeah, I wanted to write and direct this movie, and then it's just this absolutely stunning masterpiece of 60s exploitation film that's basically a film noir slasher, right? And it's very obvious that Lustig probably saw it before he wrote Maniac, because the ending is the same.
Yeah, totally.
And we really do need to talk about Aroused. I would love if Anton got back with me, though. I hope he's doing okay. I haven't talked to him in a couple of years. He's still active on social media every once in a while, so I hope he's okay.
Okay. Yeah, and Cargo of Love, like I mentioned, is also, I thought, pretty good.
I love that.
I love
that one, too.
Stuff.
Teenage Tramp is good, too. Yeah. That's the thing. His career is so inconsistent in terms of the directing. It's Aroused, and then 3 years later, Cargoes of Love, and then 3 years later, Teenage Tramp, and then and then I think he did one more that's impossible to get a hold of, which is like a 90s thriller that he wrote. And because he deposited a tape of it with the Copyright Office. Forget what it was called. The Intruder. Okay. 1993 was the last movie he did. He wrote and directed it. He also has written 2 books. He wrote a book called Prince Valium and another book in 2012 called Dolly Varden. And he's also written and copyrighted multiple other screenplays that had never been produced. He wrote a song that he registered at the Copyright Office. He mostly does dialogue and sound editing. So basically, the biggest movie that I think for me that he did was Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion. And so in terms of dialogue editing, the fact that movie was edited down to only have one use of profanity was probably him, because he was the dialogue editor on that.
Interesting.
Yeah, very prolific guy, which is, his AGFA was supposed to have released Aroused already, because that was one of the group of titles they got from Something Weird. That was a long time ago, and Anton was supposed to do a commentary for it. I don't know if he did, and I don't know when that's coming out. I really hope soon, because I think it's been restored. So I don't know why it's not out yet. Fingers crossed that changes soon.
That one is kind of an easy layup. I don't know, why that's not out either. I think it would do really well. Yeah. It's kind of sells itself.
It's basically a film noir slasher. It's another one that's like the sex is secondary. It feels just more like it feels like a precursor to like an erotic thriller, like Basic Instinct or Fatal Attraction, or it's so good. I can't really oversell it. And everyone I've recommended it to has never come back and said, why did you recommend this? Right. That's kind of like a top 10 New York sexploitation movie for me.
They should pair it up with Cargo Love. That's what I'd like to see.
That makes perfect sense, because they're both black and white, both New York, both Anton, get commentaries for both of them while he's still around, for sure.
To divert a little bit, Cargo Love is funny because when I was watching it, and I was like, you know what? I know why he likes this. Because it's Sheila Britt in a lead role with Sam Stewart. Yes. Her husband.
Yep. Husband and wife with their kid at home. Yep.
That's why. Everything else doesn't matter.
I mean, it's terrific. I have a giant poster of it. I love it. I need to actually frame that. It's great. I love Cargo of Love. Though I will say, I need to start thinking about this, actually. All of my ratings for my Something Weird stuff are typically my first reactions from like a decade and a half ago. They definitely are due for some revisions. Like, I think, what was it? I gave Girl of Sin 4.5. It's now 3.5. It dropped substantially. Rent-A-Girl, I think, is a 4 out of 5. It's still a 4 out of 5 for me. I still think it's really solid. It's just a little long in the middle, but I like it, and I think it still works, especially as a very early roughie, right when New York was really starting to do these kind of things. Yeah. But I'm trying to go back through all of the Something Weird catalog chronologically and revisit these films and be like, is this still a 5-star movie? Is this a 4.5-star movie? A lot of the times it's not, but then you have stuff like Kiss Me Quick, perfect film. Absolutely still a 5-star film.
Yeah. Rent-A-Girl it's definitely a good film, and it's a great, I think, introduction to the roughie if you haven't seen a roughie before, because there's a lot of strong imagery and a lot of familiar music and a lot of familiar faces, and it doesn't get too nasty with sexual assault, which can turn some people off. But if you're turned off by that, maybe don't watch it, and maybe roughie's not the genre for you.
Right.
But yeah, I think Rent-A-Girl's great.
Yeah, I think it's a very solid film. I think it's of the three on the Something We're Triple feature. I think it's the weakest because you can't compete with Aroused, and I actually think Help Wanted Female is, for a West Coast black and white roughie, is absolutely spectacular. But yeah, it's a top tier release. I think everyone should own that.
It was the wildest party I ever saw. People milling about all over. There must have been over 100 guests.
Just related to Cambist. So one of the people who frequently work with Cambist, and I think can tie back to Sin Syndicate and some of the other films that we'll be talking about and we'll talk about, is Jack Curtis. So Jack Curtis, most people know him now because he directed The Flesh Eaters, which was then edited by Radley Metzger. He and his wife, Terry Van Tale, ran a company called Film Sync Inc., which was there's a lot of dubbing and narration done in New York for all kinds of projects, including sexploitation. So as I looked more into Jack Curtis, unfortunately, he died in 1970, but he was very involved with shooting the inserts for a lot of the Canvas stuff, doing the English dubs for the imports. I feel like Jack Curtis is more involved with these films than we're giving credit for or that we're aware of, because a lot of the dubbing, it's not credited on these films. It's, the dubbing artists, whoever did the editing, is not credited. But I feel like Jack and Terry were very involved with these films. They could have even been involved with Cambist or with Rent-A-Girl, for all I know, because if there was any post dubbing that Lee Hessel needed done, he would have gone to Jack, because that was who he worked with so closely up until 1970 when he died. When he died, he was working on the dub for Relations, which was the Danish movie that Hessel imported. So
post production.
Yeah, I think Jack Curtis. Yeah, so big in post production. So because I think we're dealing with a lot of films in this genre that are dubbed, post dubbed, and typically will have good voices and a lot of familiar voices, like Joel Holt. And Art Ford actually is another one. Art Ford is the one who did Another Day, Another Man trailer. And I think he narrated the Girl from SIN. I believe that's him. So yeah. So Jack Curtis might have been involved with Girl from SIN even. Unfortunately, trying to find any kind of evidence of this is difficult. But the fact that he is so present in a lot of these films across the board from so many different filmmakers at that time up until 1970, I need to dig more into that and see what I can find about Film Sync Inc. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let us know if you find out anything about that. Yeah, I think people forget how much post-production is sort of a kind of a black hole a lot of times, especially with sexploitation, which is too bad. Like you said, sometimes it can make or break the film. Well, it definitely can make or break the film. And yeah, we don't know a lot about some of the people involved.
Right. I mean, yeah, because even thinking back to Sin Syndicate, where we hear that really good woman who dubs most of the women in that film.
Yeah.
I want to know who that is. She elevates that film by her dubbing, because it's all shot without sound. So it really relies on her voice. Same with the Doris Wishman stuff. All that stuff is dubbed. So all the dubbing is really doing the work for the actors, because the actors, who knows what Doris was directing them to do. Finley, he did most of that stuff himself, but Sarna was live sound. So yeah, it's just something to think about. As I was researching Canvas, I was like, wow, Jack Curtis was really involved with all this stuff. But Canvas wasn't his only client. He was working for other people.
I must have been crazy to go as far as I did. They took pictures of me. They made me take my clothes off in front of...
Yes, I can imagine. We've been watching this for some time.
That's Rent-A-Girl. William Rose, not Warren Rose. If anybody wants to go online and correct that massive amount of inaccuracy, feel free.
I know.
But I might have to go correct some of my own writing that might have mentioned that William was the Professor Lust director and 50,000 BC director.
Oh yeah,
because I don't want to spread.
I mean, but again,
misinformation.
I think it's natural to think of them together because 50,000 BC was another nudie film, which was after William wrote scripts for The Shameless and All of Me, which are also two nudist camp films. So it makes sense that they're having these parallel careers, but the difference is in one is a writer, one's a technician. So that's how but it's only one of those things of like, you have to do like I did the deep digging into the copyright office and all this other stuff. So I was like, okay, none of this is adding up that these two are the same guy. But it's a totally natural thing to assume they are. I just wanted to be definitively sure before we talked about it. So
yeah. Well, thanks for clearing that up.
If anyone has any evidence, please let me know because I could not find one thing proving that they're the same person. So please let me know.
Yeah. Have we seen any interviews with William Rose? Is there anything out there?
No, I was searching high and low.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything either.
Which is very frustrating. I watched the Dick Randall doc to see if anyone talked about him. No. I watched the interview with Daniela Giordano.
She mentions him
about
in that.
She said he was American. She does. She said he was American.
Very briefly,
but then Charles Kilgore, interviewed Werner, confirmed Werner had a German accent. So he was a German immigrant working in America. German accent. William L. Rose, American. I'm not here. I've never heard anything about William L. having an accent. So, if he did, I would think someone would have noted that they said he was American, but he spoke with a German accent. Nobody has interviewed him, even though he wrote Frankenstein's Castle of Freaks.
Yeah,
and directed Girl in Room 2A. So it's very strange that he apparently, according to IMDb, again, I need to confirm this. If he died in 2019 in Los Angeles, I just find it really shocking that no one that I can find ever interviewed him about anything. That's very surprising to me. But at least we got Werner briefly because that was a phone call that Charles Kilgore made in, the 90s, the early to mid 90s, I believe.
Yeah. Too bad we don't have more Randall talking about his relationship with William. That would have been interesting.
I know. Well, he died 96. So, we don't even have interviews with him, really, which is just very, it's just one of those things. It's a lot of people that should have been interviewed that never were, which is the story of my life. I'm trying to get all these people before they die, and sometimes you get there like a couple days after they died, which is very frustrating.
We might be able to use it. The customers wear them out so fast. We need to sort of replenish the stock.
Adam, darling, you're a scoundrel.
Yeah, you mentioned Daniela, who was in The Girl from 2A. Yeah, I went back to rewatch that interview, which she's just like, it's just American director. Not bad as a director. That's all she said. I'm like, great, thank you.
That's it. Yeah, it was totally, you can totally tell that I feel like he shot his wad with Pamela, You Are, because that feels so deeply personal. He wrote the theme song to that movie.
Yep,
that is his movie. Yeah. That is fully his movie. So Girl in Room 2A, he wrote and directed it, and then he wrote Castle of Freaks. Those totally feel like, I'm just going to throw everything in here because Dick just wants crazy stuff, so that's all I'm going to do. Pamela, You Are is his definitive statement as
it's
a
his
filmmaker.
Art film, too. Yeah.
It really is, film. Yes. And so that was another one when Something Weird announced it. I was like, oh, interesting. I'm very intrigued. And I saw District distribute it. So I was like, okay, immediately interested because they have a good track record. And then I watched it and I was just like, wow, that's another one. I think I gave it 4 stars. And actually, I just remembered that might be the best way we can confirm the Werner stuff or not, because District Archives is the largest paper record archive of production films, of sexploitation films on the East Coast. So I will reach out to them and see if I can find. I need to reach out about Gene Connolly anyway for Seeds and see what they have to say.
That'd be another good one for Distropix to re-release if they have elements for it. I don't know what's available, but yeah, Pamela.
They have The Negative.
Is a good film.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. That's one. Well, and that's another thing about the William L. versus the Werner Rose of it all, is that William L. registered stuff with the Copyright Office as William L. Rose. Most people, when they register stuff with the Copyright Office, they use their real name, not their professional name. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't know. But then again, Dick Randall did stuff as Dick Randall. That wasn't his real name. So, back to square one with that argument. But yeah, it was a real day. trying to
Yes.
figure all this out. And unfortunately, the summation I came up with was not the same person.
Well, thank you. I think we reached some interesting conclusions in this episode. And it just goes to show, even with someone like William Rose, he's not a household name in sexploitation, but he's got a very interesting backstory that we can piece together. What of it we can piece together. And all of these characters from this era also have interesting relationships with each other.
Yeah, I agree. Even directors, I mean, we're lucky that there's any kind of trail. Like Watch the Birdie, I had no idea who that director is. But it's written by and starring Richard B. Scholl, who he was very connected with.
Adam took me down to what they call the game room, and it was even wilder here. I never saw so many bizarre eccentrics. They seemed to be magnetically drawn to this one place. Well, until the next unsolved mystery with the Sin Syndicate, thank you for joining us on this Werner-a-thon.
The Rose-a-thon.
Signing
the War
off.
of the Roses. The War of the Roses. That's
Perfect.
what this is.
Perfect. That's the episode title.